All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
all
Peter.
rookies, and good morning, Bill.
Here we go.
Live from Florida.
Yeah, I'm in Florida for the next couple weeks.
We keep swapping.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So this is episode number 277. The name of this episode is Legal Creative Real Estate Escape Clauses to Use on Deals.
Oh, good. That's better than the illegal ones, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there are some. That's why I'm going over them. So
yeah,
here's
I send Guido and Paolo over once in a while when things go bad. Hey, Guido, Paolo, Paolo, go down there.
Straight it out,
yeah,
Peter.
Sure.
All right, so here's the description. Weasel clauses or contingency clauses in real estate have had entire mounds of books written about how to escape a transaction as soon as you feel it is uncomfortable, which means these carefully worded paragraphs allow you to void contracts at the drop of a hat. While all of this is really clever and considered customary, here is what I do, Peter. You ready?
Yes.
Nothing. That's right. I use none of it. all because I have found this type of language just kills deals.
Oh, okay.
While other buyers are using their weasel clauses, I have my own special ways of protecting myself. So if I don't want a deal, I can get out of it. But I do it without the seller ever getting spooked. Mm-hmm. In fact, once they see what I have done, they very often are glad and relieved all at the same time. I know this sounds dangerous, but once you listen to this single podcast, your chest will puff up, Peter. And you will start making offers like you are a superhero with a cape on. Without fear, anxiety, and even sleepless nights.
Wow. But you got more?
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Well, I got a whole podcast to do, but the description is done.
Okay. Because I thought you said in the beginning, like legal ways to get out of it. And you said, but I don't have to do those. So is there something in the middle? Like, cause what I do is I put my finger in my pocket and I push it forward a little bit. And I walk in, hey, you, with my finger in my coat pocket. Does that work? You
Italian mafia guys think the whole world works that way, don't you?
It works for me.
All right. So listen,
go ahead.
Here's the housework that we need to work on. So the deal is this. In the description of this podcast, there is a link there that will show you some of the things we're talking about today. Okay, it'll show you. Sometimes I put documents in there. Sometimes I put all kinds of things in there. But the link in this description, wherever you're watching us or listening to us, there's a link in there that will get you right to the materials that we're talking to on this podcast. It's not like a transcript or anything like that. It's just the materials that are connected to this podcast. Also, we're a little late this morning, but usually around 9:30 on Thursday mornings, Eastern Standard Time, we record this podcast. And when we do that, we live stream it to YouTube and Facebook. So there's a chat in there. And if you have questions or want to make comments, you can do that. Matter of fact, we have one already this morning, Peter. So I'm not sure the name, Maclack.
Well, no, it's McKee C LLC.
Okay, good. Thanks, Bill. I'm still a strong believer in your strategy. It's Kingsley. So thank you, Kingsley. So you can put comments or questions of whatever we're talking about if you just go to Facebook or YouTube and just put them in the comment section below the video. Okay. So that's we answer a lot of questions throughout the podcast when we do that. Also, the third Wednesday of every single month, I do a free deal structuring meetup. You can go on the front page of Flipping Houses for Rookies, and there's a link right on the top for you to sign up for that. It's usually about, I'm supposed to do it for 90 minutes. Often it goes 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And it's the third Wednesday of each month. And that's totally free. So if you want to learn more about deal structuring, go there. Okay.
Bill just can't stop helping.
Yeah. Okay, Pete. I want to start off today at ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the description, I use the language contingency. So I want to define that word first because I get a lot of people that ask me about that when I'm talking, like when I'm talking to my private coaching clients and stuff, I'm talking about the contingency. So let's clear that up first, okay?
Good idea.
So contingent, which is not it's the same use of the word contingent in any sense means depending on a certain circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
So contingent means depending on certain circumstances. Okay.
Right. It's usually used with contingent, like going to the beach tomorrow is contingent on the weather.
Right.
So if something's okay, then something else can happen.
Exactly.
Okay.
In real estate, when an offer is made or a contract is written, this is a clause or a condition that must be met by either the buyer or the seller before the contract could be executed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is the protection, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you some common examples that are used in regular purchase and sales contracts.
Sure.
So a purchase and sales contract is used when you are paying cash or buying like a rehab. That's the conventional way, as they call it conventional. It's not really conventional, but that's the way most realtors do a transaction, is with a purchase and sales contract.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, a purchase and sales contract is just the roadmap to the closing. So basically you have a buyer and you have a seller, and they have agreed verbally to what they want to do and how it's going to happen. And they put it in this contract so that the legal beagles can have a roadmap of how they need to perform at the closing. Right? So that's a purchase and sales agreement. So when you're writing a purchase and sales agreement, you would use these contingencies. And here are some examples, like a home inspection clause,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or a finance approval clause, right?
Right. If you don't get financing, you don't have to buy it.
Yeah, and the one that shows up lately a lot, this is not used as much in the past, but lately it's been a lot, is an appraisal commitment.
Yeah.
Because of the prices of houses, the appraisers, I've had a few conversations with a few. In fact, it was on your condo that I had a very lengthy conversation with the appraiser because you had me meet him out there, and he was kind of bitching about how the realtors are pushing him to inflate the numbers because they're selling these properties for over market value.
Right, because the bank has to approve the loan. They're not going to give you a loan that's too much for the property. Like you wouldn't lend your friend $1 million, so you can't pay you back.
Right.
You're not going to lend a home buyer like too much money for a house. It's not worth it. That's not good business sense.
Yeah. So
the appraiser what it's worth. So they push the guy, right?
Yeah. To your point, they're going to lend money because they want to collateralize the money. In other words, they want collateral in case you don't pay, but they don't want the collateral to be worth, 30,000 and they're paying. They're trying to secure it for 100,000.
Sure.
They want to make sure that if they go take the property, they can get it back, right?
Yeah. So note to sellers: you can't sell forever you want. The bank has to agree.
Yeah.
If it's a bank deal.
So another one would be a partner approval. That's the one I use a lot, even if I don't have a partner. And it's based on my partner's approval. That's a contingency.
Oh.
Title being clear, that's a contingency. I've had deals where I know the title's a little funky do, so I'll make that a contingency. Another one, this is pretty common in multifamilies. The tenants are out or it's vacant. It's often called broom swept. That means that the property is vacant and it's broom swept, meaning that it's not clean, but it's it doesn't have a bunch of garbage in it, right?
Yeah, cleared out.
Another contingency, which is also called the Hubbard clause, is I have to sell my house before I can buy this house.
What's the word again? Hubbard what?
Hubbard clause.
Hubbard. Oh, okay, Hubbard.
Yeah, I don't know why it's called that. I've never looked that up to see why it's called that. But a Hubbard clause means that I'm willing to buy your property and I'm willing to do, everything that you want me to do, but I have to sell my property first. And that's the biggest myth in the land, is you think that because you have a mortgage on your house, you can't get another mortgage on another house. It's just because you don't know how to do the paperwork. I give people mortgages all the time. We do that with our subject to deals. The mortgage stays in their name, and we help them get another mortgage. It has everything to do with your debt to income ratio. If you understand the mortgage guy's way of thinking, you can easily get multiple mortgages. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Pete, here's the funny part to me. This is
Yeah.
the funny part to me. What's the worst that can happen if you make an offer but can't close for some reason?
The worst that'll happen is it doesn't happen, and the seller's not happy that he wasted some time with you.
Yeah. So this is the part that confuses me, because a lot of my students will like drag their feet or ball and chain themselves on making an offer, because they think once they make the offer, it's done.
Well, it's not even done when you sign the purchase and sales agreement, because it's not really a contract; it's an agreement, right?
It's the roadmap to get to the deed. The only time you have to worry is when you sign a deed, right?
Yeah.
So
You're in the attorney's
even if
office.
it's fear, you can get out of it. Now, let's talk about this. Let's talk about a weirdness here. Let's talk about Grant Cardone.
Sure.
If you've ever read any of Grant Cardone's book, he's very verbose, right? He's very like macho and all that stuff, whatever, you know.
Yeah,
I'm not into it, but I like reading his books because then I don't have to hear him like chatter, right? But if you read any of his books, especially like the one book is Sell or Be Sold,
Yeah.
I think is the name of the book.
Yeah.
He has a whole section in there about how long it took him 2 years to convince his wife to marry him.
Right. Yeah. I read that.
Right. So that's what real estate's like. It's like a proposal. Sweetheart, will you marry me? No. Okay. Sweetheart, will you marry me if I buy you a house? No. Sweetheart, will you marry me if I give you my inheritance? You know, and I'm being facetious here, but you understand. So no just is all no is, and we've had other podcasts on this, is just a staple in your conversation. So you make decisions. No is making decisions. So they're not willing to do that. Okay, what are they willing to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So my point is that an offer is like a proposal. It's just a suggestion of what you're willing to do or want to do. So what happens is they come to you, if you don't. This is what I'm trying to say. If you don't execute the offer, right? What's the worst that can happen? That's the question. Well, they don't come to your house and break your kneecaps or hold your kids hostage, right? It's nothing like that. No, they just keep your earnest deposit. So if you put up an earnest deposit with a purchase and sales contract, they can keep that. Only if you like, and honestly, the way the contracts are written nowadays, they already have a lot of clauses in there. So unless you're just being a jerk and just like stringing everybody along or not meeting the promised dates, then you won't even have that happen. But that's the worst that can happen, is they take your earnest deposit. So let's talk about that. What's an earnest deposit? Right? So earnest money or good faith deposits are a sum of money you put down when writing a contract to demonstrate you're serious on executing that contract or closing in the way that the contract states. Right? So it's very common that it's very common that you put money down. People will put a lot of money down to show their good faith, right? And the reason why is because in most cases, and this changes mostly in commercial property, it doesn't happen this way, but in residential property, in most cases, your earnest money, when you go to closing, flips into deposit money. So if you put $1,000 down, which is customary, if you put $1,000 down on a purchase and sales contract as an earnest deposit, when you go to closing, that $1,000 goes towards your deposit money.
Sure.
Right. So the only bad thing that can happen is if you don't close, you lose your earnest deposit.
Yeah, but to lose it, you have to screw up on some of the contingencies or some of the promises. If you do, because I've never seen it happen. It doesn't happen very often. You know, when I sold my house, I had so many offers with deposits. They all got their money back because I picked one, and the other guys, you know, they went away.
Right. So the contracts, the way they're written nowadays, there's dates. So it's when you, and again, it's when you piss off the person, or if you have a shitty seller. Sometimes sellers are just shitty. Okay. They're very strict about, they're very skeptical of whether or not you're going to perform. Right. Which I haven't figured this out in my head. And I really personally would like to do an entire podcast on people thinking we're a scam. I mean, I just sold a house. I put it on Facebook for a week, and I had over 300 messenger messages, people interested in the house. And I got to tell you that the things that amazed me with selling that house, me personally, is that 1 out of 8 people were on Section 8, which surprised me. And because that's a number that it's way up compared to what I'm used to. And the other thing is the amount of people that fought with me telling me that I was a scam. They're telling me I'm a scam, and they're arguing with me about how I'm a scam. Now I had the fortunate ability in my life that one of my partners, I mean, you're a partner, and then I have another partner, Sean, who's 26 years old. Mm-hmm. My youngest daughter, Emma, was my personal assistant for 5 or 7 years, is 27, and my oldest daughter is 30. So, without insulting anybody, I mean, these kids are in that millennial stage. They're in or around it. They're around that. And I've had this conversation with them separately. Their generation thinks. I mean, Emma thinks everything is a scam. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could hold up $100 bill in front of her face and say, "This is yours," and she'll say, "That's not real."
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny how that society is nowadays. And the mistake that I made, the reason why I had all this trouble is because I offered the house rent to own. Yeah. And the misconception of the population on what a rent to own is, it floored me. Because they think, and you and I talked about this, they think that the entire rent is going towards the purchase of the house. I mean, one guy was asking for a two-year loan at $1,770 a month. He wanted $42,000 credit towards the purchase. No consideration for the taxes or the insurance, or even if I had a loan, the interest, no consideration for that at all. He just assumed that I should just give him the full $1,770 towards his deposit.
Yeah, they think it's a layaway at Walmart.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're off. So the first lesson that I would like to talk about, right? Because we're talking about these contingencies, right? So the first lesson, I always say this. If you don't use a lot of money in a transaction, you can't lose a lot of money. So if you're going to use earnest deposits, right, just be cautious of how you're going to use them, how much you're going to use. Now, here's a good thing, and we're talking the conventional way. We're going to get around to Bill's Planet in a couple minutes, but the one thing to do is it's kind of hard to write a contract and give them $100, a purchase and sales contract. It can be done, but it sends a signal to the seller on how serious you are. So one of the ways you can do that is you can time delay the money. In other words, I'm not saying you do. Here's $100 or $500. When I get my mortgage commitment, I'll give you another $500. When I get my inspection, I'll give you another $500. You know what I mean? So it time delays the chances of you having a problem and fighting to get your money back, right?
Sure.
That happens a whole lot. That happens a whole lot in the commercial business, because what happens in the commercial business is they'll do things like like ground, soil testing. They call phase 1, phase 2, all that, discovery stage.
Chemicals.
Yeah. And those tests cost thousands of dollars. I mean, they could cost anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 for those tests. And that's reliant on the buyer. So those big transactions, a lot of times they'll spend $25,000 just in their due diligence stage, right? Because it's $1 million piece of property and they got to do this and do that and all that kind of stuff, right? So a lot of this stuff, kind of falls off that tree, and it falls into the residential field, right? So again, just be conscious of how much money. So obviously, the best way to reduce the risk of loss is to reduce your deposit amount, right?
So
But
if you had a purchase that you're doing that you were concerned about some things, there may be a lien possible, or there's like some right of way difficulties, or does that well really work, or just anything that you're concerned of, you can, if you have real concerns, especially, you have grounds to stand on to do your payments in increments as things move along. Why pay for something that's not moving along?
right. So you could do a lower deposit, like a $500 deposit on earnest deposit, and then once you go check the well, you'll put in another $500.
Okay.
And it just, what it does is it conveys the truth. You have concerns, and your confidence of closing the deal isn't going to be secured until you've got that due diligence done.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So common sense is key in this area, right? You don't want to be too cheap and spook your seller by making them feel like you're not really going to close, and you're wasting their time. Just and I'll tell you that the biggest place this shows up is in the wholesale business. I mean, that I personally believe, and I shouldn't say this, but guys like Dan Merrill, who has his whole university is about wholesaling houses, and there's others have killed the industry, because a lot of people go out and they think they're going to make $5,000 because they drank the Kool-Aid, which is fine. You can do it, but I don't think it's easy to do. And what happens is people will find these deals that the seller is desperate and needs to sell for 30 or 40 cents on a dollar, sign a purchase sales contract for $100, and then try to go sell the contract to somebody else and try to make $5,000. Well, just like our yellow signs and our yellow letters, after a while, if enough people do it, it's not effective because too many people are doing it.
Yeah.
And actually what we're doing is we're educating the seller that we're doing this. And after a while, the seller catches on, like, oh, like yellow signs right now, bandit signs are difficult in a lot of cities because these wholesalers use them. And so now they see a yellow sign, and that it equates in the seller's mind that, oh, they want to buy my house too cheap.
Yeah.
That's why the word investor is hard to use, because they automatically think you're trying to make money off of their deal, or by, people have this idea that when you're negotiating, somebody wins and somebody loses.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they feel like they're losing so that you can win. And that's why it's important. All the things that you and I are working on, I'm way off topic here, but all the things you and I are working on, that's where the scam stuff comes in, because too many wholesalers have called too many sellers and tried to buy the house for pennies on a dollar. And then even if they do get a contract, they can't perform because they have nobody to buy the contract from them.
Yep.
Because they went to some course and thought this is how you're supposed to do it, but never really learned how to do it. They're just going off of the promise, the image of how it could be instead of what really happens,
And they make it look like easy money, like you don't have to get too involved. You just a third middleman, and just buy something and sell something, put money in your pocket, like easy money, like
Which we can do. I mean, we call that a slot deal, a sandwich lease option transfer. So you would get somebody to sign an option and then you transfer it to somebody. But those houses we pay top dollar for. We pay as Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I've been having a lot of trouble with Firefox lately. It just killed me. So, but we're back. We'll keep going. Sorry about that.
I just went back like I was gonna send you a message like, "Hey, what's going on?" I was just sitting here. Woo.
Oh, I don't know what John is talking about. So sorry, I was paying attention to comment. He says that there's a big town to put on an album side. Were you talking about something while I was gone?
No, I didn't send a text. I was just gonna send you a chat. Like, what do I do? Is it maybe you have a typo? There's a big town to put on an album side. We don't understand that.
He's asking, do you have an album
Oh,
side you'd like to
oh.
put on Pete?
Yeah. Well, I see a violin there, so I'll say Vivaldi
Okay.
or maybe Paganini. How's that? You
All right.
you laugh, but I used to do Paganini violin exercises on my guitar in school. He used to torture me. Back to the podcast.
All right. So we left off so common sense is key to this area. You don't want to go too low. You don't want to discourage your sellers, all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Question: is there a percentage that guides you on how much or how little?
Yeah, it's usually 1%. Like when we were doing the apartments, remember we found that out? It was
Yeah.
1% of the sale.
Yeah, sometimes they ask for 3, but we went, no, it's usually 1.
Yeah, but that's in commercial. In residential, it's very customary to be $1,000. That's a common. Doesn't matter how, unless it's $1 million house, But for $300,000 houses, it's $1,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Now all that's good, and it all works, and it's made lots of people millionaires. But I don't do any of that. I don't do any of that. So what I do is I don't make the deal about money. Right? Or as you might have learned about me, I don't stick to the rules that most follow when using the realtor system.
Yep.
I definitely don't stick to those rules.
Bill, if you haven't figured out, if the herd is going left, Bill goes right.
Yeah. So in fact, it took me a while to figure that out in my younger years. It's like if my either, because I have an ex-wife that I was married to for 16 years, and then my new wife that I've been married to for 21 years. If any one of my wife or my children told me I shouldn't be doing it, I was like, oh, I'm on the right path. So the most important thing to learn about real estate offers. This is the most important thing to learn about real estate offers.
Okay.
Make them. Right? Once you learn how to find motivated sellers, negotiate creative deals, you won't need these weasel clauses. Okay. In fact, your success completely depends on leaving behind a trail of offers. Listen to that sentence.
Wow, that's a good one.
Your success completely depends on you leaving behind a trail of offers. Remember, time changes everything. So if you have left a trail of offers, some will come back to you.
You know what that reminds me of? When the business people just keep handing out their cards. Hi, my name is, and they hand you the card and they walk away. Right? I don't do that in my situation, but I definitely have cards, and I'm ready to do more of that.
That's why we say outflow begets inflow. It's just it's Mother Nature. You know what I mean? It's like you can't like a lake, right? You can't drain the water and expect water not to come back in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just the way it is naturally, natural causes, right?
Well, opportunities are everywhere, but if you don't let people know, you can't find them. I was shopping for my new phone. Guy says, "What do you use it for? What's your business?" I said, "Music lessons, and I do real estate." He goes, "Oh, really? Me too. I buy this, I buy that. I buy wholesales, I flip them." I says, "Well, if you get one, let me know." Don't know if it's going to happen, but he claims to get a hold of properties. And I'm looking for one for my son. So I haven't heard back from him, but there's a guy. It's a lead. Maybe he gets something.
Yeah, I call it in my emails. I talk about this a lot. I call it putting yourself in the path of progress.
Yeah.
Right. So even, there's been a lot of times, and you know this because you call me on shit all the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, like I remember we were doing a multifamily, like a 6-family in East Hartford one time. You're like, how are we going to pay for it? I'm like, I have no idea. I wrote a contract and I gave him a deposit, and I was like, I have no idea. But that's the next step. You can't potty train until you wear diapers. You know what I mean? It's just the next step. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't, it's not likely you would marry a girl until you kiss her first. You know what I mean? It's just, there's a whole bunch of weird analogies I can give you, right?
How about this one? If you try to figure out the whole thing, by the time you get around to doing step number 1, it's too late. Someone else has got in front of you. So you can't sit there sorting it out like, oops, gone. No.
Right. So my number 1 rule is about making offers is just make them. And my second most important thing that I do in my offer making process is gathering facts. Right? Oh no, we're in trouble now.
Who's on the call? Who's chatting?
Mr. Fusco's here. Good morning, Mr. Fusco.
Hey, Bill. Bill number 2.
Yeah, he's one of our coaching clients. So the second and most important thing is to gather facts. We call this the discovery stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, and this is important because it's too simply stated, and you won't get the significance of how important this is because it's too simple. I use those facts to make my offer.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking the other day, and we really don't have time to do this now, but we were talking the other day on one of our calls. I've stated a lot of times, when you're a real estate entrepreneur, you need 4 things to make an offer.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know what the seller's price is. You need to know what the seller is willing to take for payments.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know what the seller is willing to take for terms or give you as terms. In other words, time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And only if they ask about a deposit, you bring it up.
Yep.
So we talk about that, right?
Yep.
We talk about that all the time.
Sure.
And then we also talk about money now, money monthly, money later.
Mm.
And we talked. I was on my Israel coaching group, and the guy Matt actually brought this up. He's like, the two go together, and he's right.
Yeah.
Because it's like when we're talking to the seller, we're talking about buying. So how much is the price? How much is the payment? And how much is the term?
Yep.
So how do you know whether it's a good deal? Well, it's just common sense. Match it up against money now, money monthly, money later. So when you're talking to the seller, it's how much you pay. So what I do is I think in my head, and I don't know why I never thought of this 277 podcasts ago. But what I do is I compare it to like, how much am I going to get?
Mm-hmm.
So the price is, okay, I paid $203, but I can get $230.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, so then I think to myself, okay, well, the payment is $1,176, but I can get $1,700.
Yeah, like for a rent.
Right.
Yeah.
And like that's how I do it. So, and I wrote this in a document, one of our standard operating procedures that we use in the apprenticeship program now, which is a job description and scripts and all that stuff we use, right?
Mm-hmm.
I put in there, how do you know you have a good deal? And that's because you have multiple exit strategies.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you know you got multiple exit strategies? And the point is that the house is popular with buyers. It's not thwarted by it's an ugly house or it's a dysfunctional house or the payments are too high. It doesn't have any of those things that a seller wouldn't want. Like I just sold a house, and I'm using those numbers. I just sold a house, which we were talking about. I paid $203 for it. I sold it for $230, right? The payments are $1,770, right? And it's got a nice yard. It's got 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms. I mean, it was like not the perfect house, but it's a great starter house. it was popular with buyers. And I proved that because I put it on Facebook and boosted it for $50. And in 7 days' time, I got over 300 responses. So it was a popular house.
Yeah.
So how do you know which kind of a house do you buy? It's not whether you like the living room or whether you like the neighborhood or whether you like the schools. It has nothing to do with you. How popular is it to the market, to the buyers?
Is there a way to know that in advance?
Yeah, you could do some due diligence, but I mean, it's not hard to go into Zillow or Facebook and just see what's being advertised.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of common sense. Anyways,
Yeah.
we're off topic, but so when you're doing the offer correctly, right, you're gathering these facts so you can compare them up against the buyer facts. Because you kind of have a good idea what the buyer is looking for, because buyers are easier than sellers. You can find buyers, because I found 300 of them for $50 on Facebook, right? So when you're making your offers, you're looking at the problem that the seller has. Can you overcome it, and will it be a barrier for your buyer? Like, you have to give them $25,000 down. So that's a seller problem. So is that a barrier? Yeah, because what buyer is going to give you? So I want to make sure I did that right. So you need to give the seller $25,000 down. So what buyer is going to give you 25 grand down?
Yeah.
On a $200,000 house.
Yeah, because we don't want to put the money in ourselves. That's the whole point of creative financing. You don't have to put the money in. Yeah.
So you're constantly. That's how deal structuring works. Is you're looking. I mean, it's just pure business. Like, how much do I pay and how much can I sell it for? I mean, Walmart does it. Dunkin' Donuts does it. Starbucks does it. I mean, Amazon does it. They all do it, right? Like, there's a spread. So what's the spread, and how am I going to make my money here? Sure. Am I going to if I'm going to do a slot deal, am I going to make my money just on the fee? The $5,000 fee, and no money monthly, no money later. And if that's the case, then you know how much time you're going to spend on that deal, right? So when you're making these offers, you have to take a look at the seller's problems, and will the buyers absorb those problems? And that's a good offer. And if the seller's problems are easily overcome, then you have a lot more sellers. I'm sorry, a lot more buyers.
Yeah.
Right? So when you do these deals this way, right, and you're structuring these deals this way, what happens is you find the sellers, you're helping the seller build, right, these custom offers together with them, right, and helping them with their situation. So you're giving them an offer that solves their situation, knowing that you can assign that offer to a buyer.
Right.
I know I'm belaboring this, but it's really how it works. It's so simple. I mean, I've not been able to explain this for 277 podcasts, right? So,
well, I think part of it for us trying to hear the whole thing and wrap our wits around it is it's not just the house and the price of a house. You're not buying a lawnmower. You're buying a house people live in, or people don't live in. They own it. They're not there. They're far away. It's a problem. So there's the house itself with its own situation. Then there's a buyer with some lifetime situations. Some personal
what makes
problems.
me different? What makes me different than everybody else that you would learn from is I weigh heavily on the human side of the business. Like my partner Sean, who, like I said, is 26 years old. He'll tell you point blank. He's like, I don't understand it. He's really good at doing all the analysis. He does spreadsheets. He does. I mean, we got a guy we're talking to right now in Cleveland, Ohio, that's got 9 properties he wants to sell us.
Wow.
Actually, is it Cleveland? I'm
Ohio.
not sure where it is. Yeah, it is in Ohio. I don't know where it is. Maybe it's it doesn't matter. But he's got 9 properties, and I'm like, I won't even mess with that. It's like, go take care of it, Shawna. He put this whole spreadsheet together, and he's got all this data and blah 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 blah, but he can't get on the phone and call the guy and close him. Right. Oh. So my emphasis is on all these emotional type factors. That's what sticks people to me. And quite honestly, that's what buys real estate, right? That's what buys real estate is the human emotion on it. It's not the property itself. We do that last. I mean, we have a 5 or 6 step process. We don't even look at the house until step 5.
If he's not willing to sell it to you, what are you looking at?
Yeah, if they're not motivated and willing to listen to your types of offers, then who cares if the property is like the Taj Mahal? They're not going to move. They're not going to move the ownership rights from them to you until they feel good about it.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was the multifamilies you just did some sales with this year. I remember it was that guy who said I had several people approach me to purchase this, but he just trusted you.
Yeah.
He felt like you could do it. So whatever emotionally or relationship wise concepts, whatever it was, he picked you over somebody else. That's a people thing. That's got nothing to do with the number on the piece of paper.
Right, which is annoying for me because people want scripts. You know, my students want scripts, and how do you say? It's like if you just listen, if you just ask the right questions, and there are not many of them. Like one question is what would have to happen for me to buy your house today? They'll tell you. Right now, you just need to go figure that out. You know, you need to be a good customer service representative. Most think of any good company that you would call, like Apple's known for that. Apple Computers, they have really good customer service. Their Genius bars are great, right? In most cases, not everybody will say that, but in most cases they're great because you go there and they help you. I mean, I've had a Mac computer I bought from them 4 or 5 years ago, and I still go to the Genius bars, and they don't charge me.
What do you call it? The Genius bars?
Genius bar.
What is that?
That's their customer service.
Oh, they call it. Yeah. Okay.
That's where the tech guys are, right? So
okay.
We won't hold that against you, Peter.
No, I think I've seen one. I'm going there to buy some phones, and I'll go to the bar where the Geniuses are. So okay, I understand now. Thanks. I haven't been there in a few years.
All right. So when you're talking with the seller and helping the seller with their stuff, all it is just two-way communication. You don't have to be a genius about this. Just like, Pete, what's holding you back? Like what's the most painful part of this deal, or what frustrates you the most? That's a great question. What frustrates you the most about this property? Right? And they'll tell you. So if I help you get rid of that frustration, will you sell me the property? I mean, it's really just human emotions. It's understanding people, right? So when you do these type of offers, what happens is you take the seller from being a prospect to a cheerleader. They're egging you on. They're like, oh my God, this guy's going to give me something nobody else can give me, which is what you just said a few minutes ago. It's a guy said, I have other offers, but he sold to me. I mean, I just did, and I talked about this a few podcasts ago, but last month I did the biggest deal I've ever done. I had 3 multifamily houses and I made $375,000. Right? That's the biggest profit I've made so far. Profit. That was profit.
Not sales price, profit.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I made $375,000 on $500,000 worth of real estate. Right. So
how much did it cost you to buy them, Bill?
$200.
Thank you.
So, but that's what you're talking about. This guy told me multiple times in a 2-month closing that he was like, you're a stand-up guy. I heard that about 6 or 8 times. And when we got all done, he was like, I had and he told me the last 3 weeks that we were together, I had so many people offer me what you offered me, and I just trusted you, so I went with you, and I'm so glad I did, because look what happened. It was 3 years later, but look what happened. I took those properties. He worried about them not at all. He went to Florida. I took care of them. I took care of all the tenants. There were 7 or 8 tenants. I took care of the tenants that were all headaches. I did, I had all kinds of, all the way from cockroaches to squirrel problems to, replacing floors and bathrooms. And there was all kinds of problems. And I did all of it. But that's because I gave my word. Okay, so what happens is, and it all came from the offer, by the way. That's why I'm talking about this, is because the offer is the proposal, and they have confidence that you're going to be able to perform this way. Right? Now, unfortunately, here's what happens. And I learned this in the last month. I have learned more about, and I've been coaching for 12 years or more. And I think I'm a really good coach. And I'm not saying that because I'm arrogant. It's just because I've had a lot of success. I've had a lot of Ron LeGrand students and Dan Merrill students and Kiyosaki students and Pace Morby students that spend 20, 30, 40, $50,000 and haven't bought a house, and they come to me and I get them to buy a house because I'm an action guy. I'm like down in the trenches and I still do it myself. Right.
Yeah.
And I really feel like I was not a slouch in the coach arena, especially with real estate. And I put a lot of care into my students. You ask any one of my students and they will tell you that. I give them a lot of help.
Yeah. Well, over 2 hours every week is better than half an hour every other week. Just start there.
Yeah.
Just start there.
And then the WhatsApp groups and the stuff in between the weeks, the days in between, I call them if I have to. Right. But unfortunately, with this new apprenticeship program, I learned the most valuable lesson I have learned in 20 years. In 20 years, I've learned a lot about my coaching clients, because what we're doing now is we actually set up a platform. We use REI Reply, which I'm not affiliated with at all. I don't even have an affiliate link with them. It's $50 a month software. And we set up a business where I buy the houses. We set up a business in REI Reply, and the coaching clients are running that business. So they have a texter, they have an opening caller, they have a closing caller, they have a deal meeting person, they have an admin secretary, they have all these, and I wrote up all these job descriptions so they know what to do. And each week they get to actually do those tasks. So they're talking to live sellers. I'm spending the money for the marketing and the system, and there's all the hat write-ups. And during the week, we message one another, like call this guy or call that guy or text this guy or what about this document? And it's like all this stuff, right? It's real. It's like we're a team. Like we all are in the same business running that business, right? So there's a lot more. And I'm finding that guys that have been with me several years are doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And I had no idea they weren't doing it. They were doing it. But here's the lesson. The lesson is this. There's two of them, actually. So I'm finding with this new apprenticeship program, these two things have become new to me. Number one, they talk too much and nothing happens. So they talk to people and nothing happens. Right? Which is why I'm elaborating. I know I'm supposed to be talking about offers, but this is all part of it. They're talking to them and nothing happens.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm talking about when you make an offer, whatever the seller's problems are, can you absorb them and pass them on to your buyer? Like they need $25,000 down. Can you absorb $25,000 down and get that from your buyer? Their payment's $3,000 a month on a $200,000 mortgage. Can you absorb that $3,000 and pass it on to your buyer? And these people, these coaching clients are not thinking like that. So they're talking and they're trying to use all my special secret like sentences to convince them. They're not thinking about what the seller's saying to them.
Yeah.
They're too worried about what they should say next instead of absorbing what they're saying and actually trying to help them as if it was their own problem. So that's number one. And number two, too many become professional information gatherers, and they never take the next step. Like I'm training an acquisition manager right now, and he just wants to be able to like gather the information, give it to me, and say, "Okay, Bill, structure the deal." And I'm like, "No, it ain't happening that way. No can do. You structure the deal and send it to me, and let me see, because that's the meat and potatoes of this entire business." You make all your money with the offers and the way you talk to the sellers. You collect it when you sell it. I mean, that's an oldest saying I know in real estate.
Yeah.
Right. But if you can't gather facts and think with them and help the customer become your cheerleader, your seller become your cheerleader, you're point blank. It's not your intellectual intelligence or your logical thinking that's stopping you. It's the human side. You're not able to communicate to that person and break their social veneer, right? And get and invade their personal space a little bit by asking them, well, how much a year do you make? That's like saying, Peter, how many times a week do your wife and you have sex?
Oh, boom.
It's like that type of a question. It's not something you would normally hear, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Asking for the mortgage information. Like, oh, why do you need that? Well, it's financing.
You know, it's like, Peter, what time of the day do you take a crap? You know what I mean? It's like, it's those, I mean, I'm being crude here, but honestly, it just proves the point. If you're not willing to ask those questions and do the human side of it, it just isn't going to happen.
You know, I also saw one other thing just this week, because I'm helping you with all of that, is that sometimes the sellers say, I want this, that, and the other, and you can't do that. Like, sorry, we don't do that. And I see the students trying to think, well, how am I going to do that? Well, we don't do that. So there's a point we have to say, well, listen, here's how it actually works. We do this, we do this, we do this. And I can help you if we can do that with it, or this with it. But you have to draw the line too. It's not just trying to give them everything they're asking for. It's like, well, here's how this works on our side. We'll try to meet in the middle. We'll try to accommodate you, but we can't just do that you're asking. And I lost Bill again. I'm just looking at myself on my screen. So I'll wait for Bill to come back.
So there we are. Second crash in one podcast.
I'm not doing that, am I?
No, it's me. It's my Firefox. I just shut everything off and reopened it, so I think we're okay. But you're right. You say, you were clever enough to say this. We don't. What is this saying? You say we find motivated sellers. We don't create them.
No, you said it. I just have to keep repeating it to people because I didn't do that at first because I'm so used to maybe helping people and always trying to find a way to help somebody. But if they don't want to do something, you don't have to. And this is buying a house. This isn't saving somebody's life or solving their life problems. It's a house. Take it or leave it. But they're either motivated or not. The thing is to find it.
Right.
Like and it almost reminds you of going on a date where you're sitting there with the girl and you just yap about yourself. And I do sports and I like cars and who cares? Ask the girl how she is.
Right.
Show interest. I learned this thing in communication. You can be interesting, which I am because I'm an artist, musician. I got to get up on stage and be interesting sometimes. But you're supposed to listen to people and be interested. And they'll think you're the most amazing person if you just listen to them. They'll think you're amazing.
Somebody asked me not too long ago, so I'm 21 years in my marriage with Pamela, my second wife. And my first wife, I think we were married 13 years together, 16 years. And they're like, what's the difference? You know, my answer was, I communicate to my second wife. I didn't to my first. Right. All right. So this brings me to my bold promise in the beginning of the podcast description, or in the podcast description. What do I do for escape clauses?
Yeah.
Right. So here it is. Most of my offers, like I've already revealed this, but I'm going to put it in, I'm going to articulate it in nice words. Most offers are solely based on the real estate alone. That's the edifice or the building.
Yeah.
The condition, the repairs, the taxes, etc. It's the physical aspect. It's the objective point of the deal. In other words, objective is outside of your mind.
Yeah, it's objects, things.
Right.
Brick, mortar, glass, steel.
I don't do this. I make my deals on what the person controlling the real estate will do. It's a subjective offer. So an offer that might be good for you, somebody else would be, that's stupid. Why would you do that? Right. So in other words, I'll pay whatever price you ask me as long as I get to pick the terms.
Yeah.
Right. So the real estate is just a way to get to the terms. Right. And like I have said multiple times, and it's one of the most misunderstood things that I say, is the money's in the money. Right. In other words, that's the way banks are. Banks are not in the real estate business; they're in the money business. But they need that. People have to have a reason to borrow the money. Otherwise, why would somebody go to the bank?
Yeah.
right? Well, they want to buy a house, so they need to like go to the bank because the house is the object. It's not, they're not in the real estate business, they're in the money business, but they need a reason. So for us, we need a house to write terms deals. And if you notice, all our profit, especially like in again on the third Wednesday of every month, I do just deal structuring for an hour and a half, 2 hours on a Zoom call to show you how this works. You know, how do you buy a house for $260,000, sell it for $260,000, and make $84,000, right? It's because the money is made in the money. It's the paperwork that's attached to the houses, right? So what happens is the people that are making offers that need to have all these clauses are just looking at the houses, right? So one of the biggest upsets I have with the realtor system, and this is I will go to my grave shouting this, is they actually have a code of ethics, and in the code of ethics, they actually say, do not reveal your seller or buyer's motivation. They think that's unethical, right? So in other words, if the seller has a job transfer and needs to be in Toronto, Canada in 30 days from now, the realtor is like no sympathy on, well, we'll see what happens, because they don't know any difference.
Well, they're only selling for cash. And the only thing that letting somebody know that is, oh, this guy's up against the wall. I'll take my the offer,
right?
Because it's just all cash right now.
Right.
We're not talking all cash right now deals. We're talking creative financing, how to arrange it so the guy gets out of the thing and doesn't get raked over the coals. It's a different arrangement.
Right.
They only have the one exit strategy, so that they really shouldn't say anything in that case. But we don't play that game.
Correct. So if we get offers accepted based on our awesome no bank qualifying terms, here's my Weasel clause. Ready?
Sure.
When I don't want a deal, I assign it. I just assign it to somebody else. What is an assignment? That's the method or manner which a right or a contract is transferred from one person, the assigner, to another, the assignee. So what I do is I make the deal as if I was going to buy it myself where I like it. And if I don't want it, I'll give you a classic example. I had a coaching client that's in Israel, and they're buying a property in Akron, Ohio. And the deal was too much repairs. She's 6,000 or 7,000 miles away.
Yeah.
So I said to her, okay, so the seller is willing to give you a subject to deal, meaning they'll let you take over the mortgage payment, right? Put the deed in your name, and the seller is willing to do that. So because you don't want to do the renovations because you're 7,000 miles away, you're saying we shouldn't do this deal? Well, yeah, she said. I'm like, hell no. So what we'll do is we'll sign that person up, and we'll tell her we need 45 days, to go find a buyer, or just sign up or whatever. Just be overt with her and tell her up front, and then just put that on Facebook like handyman special, and just assign that contract to somebody else. My point is that the offer is for the seller, not for you. The offer is revealing what you might be willing to do. Would you consider it? So if Pete, you're selling a house for $200,000 and I'm trying to offer you $100,000, well, you're likely not going to want to do that. Nope. But if I say to you, you got a house for $200,000, I'll buy it from you for $210,000, you're going to be skeptical and be like, well, why would you pay $10,000 over?
Yeah.
I know we're at the hour mark, but I have a friend of mine that's in Arizona. We worked together for 6 years. We traveled the country 40 weeks a year. We did a seminar 40 weeks a year all over the country in Canada.
Yeah.
So he owns an auto repair shop with a bunch of bays. He's got 8 or 10 mechanics working for him. He's got this whole thing running smoothly. Guy next door he's trying to buy the property next door to him. He said he had it appraised. They're appraising it between $350,000 and $400,000.
Yeah.
He's saying he doesn't think the guy will sell for less than $450,000. You know what I told him? Why don't you pay him $500,000? You want to know the reason why? because he already told me in an earlier conversation that if he acquired this piece of property and he was able to like spread his business out, he could increase his business by $500,000 a year income wise.
Wow.
He can increase his business by 500,000. He's already doing 2.2 million, so he can bring it up to 2.5 or 2.7 million because they'll have more places to park cars. They, whatever he's going to do, he's going to increase his business by $500,000. So, so is the price of that property really relevant to him? No.
I tell people that when they're doing, I learned this from you, like when you're doing any kind of deal, just don't look at the price of any one thing. You got to do the entire numbers for the entire thing and see where you land.
And I do that with my personal finances. It's like I want to buy a car and it's $199 a month or $200 a month. I don't think to myself, I got to pay $200 a month. What I think is okay, so I make $80,000 and I'm going to take $2,400 right off the top. My groceries are $500 a month, so I got to take $6,000 off the top. And then I say, okay, so my insurance is $1,000 a year. I take that off the top. Okay, so when I get all done, it's like my what am I going to have left? Right, and that's how I do it. That's how I do my personal finances.
I do the monthly way. Like I need another $200. I need $200 more cash flow.
Right,
and you probably do that too. Just look at the cash flow, just increase it.
Yeah.
So one way or the other.
What you could do is on your personal finances, I do this with my kids, go back 13 weeks in your checkbook and just add up all the money that you spent in 13 weeks. And then divide that by 13. That number, say it's $1,300, and divide that by 13. That means you need $100 a week to pay your bills.
Yep.
So how could you find a job that will pay you $200 a week? You know what I mean? And that's how you do it. So I do my deal structuring the same way. I add up all the numbers. I do it over the course of 2 years or 5 years or 3 years or whatever, and I add up all the numbers. So yeah, obviously I got to know what my monthly bills are, but if I do it just by month, because here's the reason why, and then we'll get out of here. Here's the reason why. I live in Connecticut. I'm sorry to actually publicly admit that. I live in Connecticut. Connecticut sucks. It's one of the highest tax states in the United States, right?
Yep.
But I live there. My kids are there. That's where I am. Well, how can I evaluate a deal when 10 months, 9 or 10 months out of the year, I don't have this thing called snow plowing, right? All we need to do is get in the middle of January and have a snowstorm every other day that's 2 feet of snow, and I'm writing checks for $150, $200 to plow.
Sure.
So all of a sudden that month I've got $1,000 worth of checks for snow removal.
That's right.
Right. So how can I equate monthly? If I put that into my financial plan for a year, I know that's part of my expenses. And I just, so that means if I'm going to spend $2,000 or $2,400 a year on snow removal, that means every month I have to put away $100.
200.
Or 200, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to average it out. Yeah. Well, for things that are not constant every month, but yeah, you figure it all out and you find what it is.
So in ending the podcast here, so what I do for my Weasel Clause is I still go and make a good deal, but instead of backing out of the deal, I'll assign it to somebody else and still put the transaction together. So my seller is relieved because they still get the same transaction. It doesn't matter to them whether I close or whether you close. So I could do, and I probably will do, a matter of fact, maybe I'll do that next week, but we could do a whole podcast just on assignments.
Hey, would you say assigning, just for the layman, is some way similar to subletting? Like if you rent something and like I got to move, and you sublet it to somebody else, is it something like that?
What an assignment is you have the rights to do something and you're passing them on to somebody else.
Yeah, but I mean, like if somebody has a rental and he has the right to rent to somebody else if he had to leave, it's just something like that? Not at all.
You have me. Of course, it's like that. It's anything you have the rights to. So it could be a lease, it could be an option, it could be a title, it could be a purchase and sales contract. In other words, you have the rights to do something, and you can just give it to somebody else. You can pass it along.
Just to put in terms of something people might have run into, because it's not strangers you're talking about.
So what happens is all the benefits that I negotiate go from my seller to my buyer, and I make a fee for doing it. So at the end of the day, I don't risk my earnest deposit. I actually turn those unwanted deals into a profit center for me.
And that's in the contract that it's assignable.
Yep.
Good.
Okay. So that's it. So hopefully, I mean, we kind of diverted quite a bit today, but hopefully this podcast was helpful for you. Make sure you go into the description and you click on the link, because that link will help you get more stuff like what we were talking about today. I changed that link lately. I changed it almost every podcast or every other podcast. So if you think you've been in there and you saw the link and it's the same link, it's not. I try to make the links apropos to the whatever we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I do crazy shit. Sometimes I'll give away forms and I'll give away, free shit in there, because not a lot of people go in there and check that link. So, they listen to the podcast and they're like, oh, I already know what the link is. Bill's trying to sell me something. It's like, okay, well, you lose, because the rest of the people got something for free. So anyways, thank you for being with us. Thanks for all of the support in the comments. And if you need any help or have any questions about what we do, you can go to flippinghouses4rookies.com. There's a lot of stuff there, including a free page that has over 26 documents and videos and all kinds of stuff like that on there, as well as a support ticket system on the top right-hand side. You can send a support ticket in, and I answer all those support tickets myself personally. So if you have any questions, just send them there. Okay? Over and out. Have a good week.